Hello, my name is Jay Mckibben with OnPoint. I am the operations manager here, and I'm going to be going over part 2 of the Pixhawk assembly video. Part 1 I started, got everything laid out, went through the hardware and that sort of thing. Part 2 is going to be the remaining connections necessary, a little bit more on the components, and final assembly. And then you should be able to watch Ron's video on the setup of the software of it. One thing to note about the assembly, the Hawk and the Longbow, although different sizes, have basically the same hardware kits. Actually, it is the exact same hardware kits. And so the assembly is somewhat similar. If you're doing a Pixhawk on a Hawk or on a Longbow, you're going to be using the same components, so it really is just going to be a different sized frame that you're dealing with. But again, that'll be more on the software side of things. Today we're just going to finish up doing the assembly, and hope everything goes well. Yeah. Alrighty, here we are with part 2 of our Pixhawk assembly video. A recap of our last video: we added our ESC, we did our landing gear, we got most of the body and frame put together. Some things that I tried to emphasize was making sure you know what number each of these signal wires, which motor they go to, which motor they control, and then mark them somehow so that you can so you know what they go to after they're out of view, because you won't be able to see these anymore. So the other thing we have left to do is to add our motors. So that's something quick and easy. I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. And then probably fast forward after we do some editing. The thing I'll point out about the motors, you'll have a motor base plate, basically like this, that you'll attach your motors to. There is a packet of screws that are labeled motor screws or motor bolts. So you'll use those to attach your motors to your motor plates. And then you're going to have, we call them T-bones. There's going to be another plastic bag with, well, actually the plastic bag will have the motor bases and the T-bones together. But the T-bone is there to elevate the bolt heads up out of the way so that they don't rub. So you're going to add that to one side of it, and then, hopefully you can see this, but you're going to slide it through here with the motor wires coming out to this side. Sometimes it's easy to get the screw or the bolt to go through the hole if you're using something to kind of aim with. And then you're going to use your other T-bone on the bottom side of it so that you don't smash your tube. You are using a bolt with a nut, and so therefore there is a large amount of pressure that you can put on these, and so therefore you have to be cautious that you don't over torque it. And so I'm adding these are black steel nuts. They are in a packet of 24, I think, in your kit, and you're just going to go through and tighten each one of these down so that you have your motors in place. Just like that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these. So now I'm just going to go through and snug them all up. It's usually a good idea to leave everything loose initially so that it's easier to line everything up. Then go back and tighten. And again, like I said, you don't need to really crank it down either. You just are tightening until you feel resistance. There's some nylon inside these nuts that actually act as a kind of like a lock nut so that it can't loosen up or back out. So like I said, you really don't have to kill it. You don't have to crank it down. You can just get it snug and you should be good to go. Alright, now we will go ahead and connect these up. So you got your motor wires, and then these are your ESC wires. We have these red 3D printed little grommets, I guess you could call them, and it's mainly just to protect your wiring going through the carbon fiber. The edges, you know, we don't want anything getting frayed or damaged or anything like that. So try to remember to add that. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect these. Now, I'm going to leave them kind of dangling out because if you need to change your motor rotation at any point, all you wind up having to do is swap two of these wires. That's why we have this designed this way, is so that they're easily accessible. So I'm going to leave them dangling out like that. I'll still go ahead and put the little, grommet in, but I'm going to leave them out until closer to the finish assembly. And actually it'll be after you check your motor rotation, so it'll be during the software side of things. But you're going to need to have access to these so that you can manipulate the direction of your motor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the rest of these. If you lose one of the red square items, we can always send you more. Or if your school has a 3D printer, we are printing these. It's TPU, so if your school has a printer that will print TPU, we definitely can send you the file. We've done that for a few schools already that wound up wanting to print some extras, and so if you need to print anything, there's a few other items on this drone that you can just send us an email, and we will send you the file if you need it. Alright, so our motors are in good shape. Alright, so now what we'll do, we are almost ready to button this up, at least this next plate over here. Let me take off this top plate real quick. So something you may notice, my power lead is going out at the front of the drone. You're like, why? Why is your power lead going out the front and not the back? Well, this is specific to Pixhawk. So we use the Durandale Pixhawk, and you can see the arrow right here. So that's the direction it needs to be pointing. This back here is where your motor signal wires will plug in. So we want these routed towards the back, like that, so that they can come up into the back of the flight controller like this. So that's why we did that. That's also why it's important for you to make sure you get these routed in the correct direction, because if you don't, you're going to have problems. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and add this plate in, and we'll start talking about the next thing to do. And like I said before, I never really tighten anything down until I get it all in place. These are the number 6, or the 6mm bolts. I think you should get a packet of 46. We use them pretty much all over the frame. Okay, so we have our signal wires here. We know our flight controller is going to go in the middle here. So we'll just kind of place it like that for right now. So let's talk about components. This is your GPS puck. Again, you notice that there's an arrow, so it needs to match the same direction as the flight controller. Now you can put it almost anywhere on the drone, but you need to have the arrows facing the same direction. We usually keep it in the same plane or the same line, so it's always, you know, that's a safe bet to do. So, GPS. This is the PMU. Now what this does is, as you can see right here, it's going to plug into here, feeding to the ESC that then feeds the rest of the drone. This PMU, I think it's Power Management Unit, has a current sensor, it has a voltage regulator. It basically is going to keep track of all the power information and feed it to the flight controller. So you want to have it, you know, near the things you need to keep in mind is where are you going to have your battery. We'll mount our battery up on the top, so this needs to be available for the battery. And then we need to have enough slack for this to plug into the flight controller. So I mean, you could do it like this. You know, that's one of the things I mentioned kind of in part 1. There's not an exact required location, but whenever you're building, you want to keep in mind where you're going to have things, where the props are going to be. I kind of like this, you know, maybe what we do is we route it up through here like this, like that. And then we put it right here. I kind of like that spot, so I'm going to go that way with it. And that's kind of the message I'm trying to send is, you know, you don't have to put it right here, but again, the goals are keep it away from the props, keep it away from damage, keep it from flopping all over the place. These are all rules of thumb that you want to do while you're building these things. Okay, so we've got our PMU. We'll wind up putting that with a zip tie. We've already plugged it into our power one. So now we can move on to our next thing. The GPS, like I said, that's your GPS puck. It's labeled right here, GPS module. So we're just going to pop that in right there, like that. And then we need our receiver. RCN is where your receiver will go. If you look at your flight controller, if you look at the side, there is a key that tells you how to plug these in. A minus is your negative, the plus is your positive, and then that funky little symbol right there is a signal, a sine wave. And so that tells me that my signal wire is going to be plugged in at the base or at the bottom of the flight controller. So I got my negative, the red is the positive, and the white is the signal wire. So that's just going to plug in just like that. And then if you remember, I was calling these, or I was calling them signal wires. And there's only one wire that you can see right here. So that tells you that you only need to put it in the bottom pin. Now of course, you know, there's an exception. Number 1 has got a ground wire and a signal wire. So for that one, that'll go in the number 1, Just like that. Then we find 2. Here's 2. And all he's going to do is go into the bottom one, like that. We need 3. Like that. And then we need 4.